Let me tell a tale of a world where heroes walk among us, fighting through the darkness left by monsters and by selfish men. A tale of glory rents asunder, sacrifice and battles lost. Our heroes know not what awaits them, and still they carry on. Let me sing a song of a family forged by trials and woe. On their own they falter, but together they will write their own tale of glory rent asunder, sacrifice and battles lost. Our heroes know not what awaits them, and still they carry on. What was rent shall be restored. What was lost now shall be found. The price of valor ever rising, but victory brings new rewards. Tales of glory, might, and wonder, hard-fought battles, treasures won. Our heroes know their fate awaits them, and so they carry on. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ages of Einor. My name is Pixel, and this is Beast, and we are here to do another one of our world building streams. And today we decided to do kind of an interesting stream. Our last couple of streams, let's see, we did things we could learn from Elden Ring. We did things we could learn from Maria Iyengar. This one, we're going to kind of to some extent be addressing a question that some of you may have, which is, why should I listen to these losers anyway? And part of the answer is like, you shouldn't. Like, whatever, do whatever you want, right? We just have some ideas we want to share with folks, but we thought it would be a good opportunity to share some about one of the settings that one of the two of us has actually built and worked on. Just sort of as a way, one, if you like what you hear about this, then that would be an indication of like, well, yeah, maybe I should listen to some of the things these guys have to say. And then, two, to sort of give us an opportunity to like, show you guys some of the things that we've worked on. So that is part of why we're doing this. And we are going to be talking about a Beast's setting, which is called the Beast Wild.
Ooh.
So, we've got some notes here, and we'll kind of, I'm sure, go off book and go down some rabbit holes. But
sure, certainly.
To start with, why don't I just kick it to you, and you can kick off however you want. I don't know if you want to just kind of like give a brief rundown of the setting, or if you want to try to just jump into the first sort of like topic about where you started with the idea for the setting. I'm going to kind of leave that up to you.
Yeah, so let me get into it a little bit. I have been playing D&D since I was about 9, not continuously. and sort of brief stints between 9 and 11, 15 to 17, and then kind of more recently with D&D 5th edition. So I've been thinking about this kind of junk for a long time, right? I think a lot of us have. Some of us have the dreams and the ability to dream and invent beaten out of us pretty young, and it can be tough to reclaim that. So I'm hoping that I can be a kind of encouragement for you if you feel like your imagination needs some reviving. So, the Beast Wilds is a setting that I built that is just stuff I like, which I think is fun and interesting ideas. And it all really started with one idea that I just kept building on top of. And that was the mystery of old gold. So, old gold in the Beast Wilds is a metallic alloy which most of the magic stuff in the world is made out of. So if something is gold, there's like a 50-50 shot it's also magic. Very easy to telegraph, which is why I love the idea, right? Another reason is old gold is a type of metal that nobody knows how to make anymore. But there's a lot of it around. So at some point, someone was making stuff with this, and that's the mystery. It's as simple as that. I just thought it would be fun to have something that everybody forgot about, but that was somewhat ubiquitous. And that, to me, that little kernel of a mystery to the players, like you give the players a magic sword and it's made out of gold, and then the next time they see something that's magic, it's also made out of gold, they start asking questions. So that was it. That was the whole idea that I spun off of to make my campaign setting, which I've been running now for about 4 years or so.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah. Um, yeah. So I remember. I mean, speaking of it as a campaign setting, let's jump into the question of that campaign,
mm,
of like how you conceived of it when you started it, right? Because you originally conceived of this idea as a West Marches style campaign. So if you want to talk a little bit about like what that is for people, I know there's lots of
sure.
videos on that on YouTube, but as you perceived it or perceive it now, what is that idea? And then how did that impact how you built the setting?
Yeah, there's definitely like a form and function relationship. Um, that's it's reflexive. It's back and forth. Where I wanted to run games, and I wanted to run games in my own world, in my own setting, with this whole like old gold thing. Um, and I had to start somewhere, and I needed to start somewhere small. So I created a tiny little, like, middle of nowhere town with just vast emptiness around it, like no civilization and stuff. To make it so unappealing to leave this place that the characters would be forced to just kind of interact with it and live in it and explore it, and talk to some of the NPCs I had made and start to just pick up on like the sense of my setting. That's how I started. And uh, a West Marches campaign, in the traditional sense, is when you have a vast blank space and a starting location smack dab in the middle of it. So the idea behind West Marches is that it's a kind of campaign that you can run in a TTRPG setting like D&D, uh, where you start as small as possible with maybe like a couple of rumors about stuff that is outside of what you know. It's out there in the world. You have a map that is blank, and your characters decide what to pursue and where to go. And, you kind of give them what you're able to create for them, half on the fly and half with a little bit of prep. So that's what I did. I created a session. I had a single place. I had a conundrum. I had some rumors and things. I had some games and festivals and frivolity and comedy. And I just created the smallest possible sandbox for my players. And the kinds of players that showed up told me about the places in the world that I had to figure out next because that's where they were from
Yeah,
and that's what
right.
they were about. Um, so I really, really wanted to run games. I didn't have a lot of content. I didn't take a lot of time to world build. Uh, but I made one session with a few ideas about the world, and then I let my players start to give me the uh, the shape of what I had to figure out
Sure.
next.
Yeah.
One fun thing about the West Marches style of campaigns is that it's not the same cast of characters every session. It's not like a long play session like you might have seen with like Critical Role, where you have the same cast from session to session to session, and you're just following them as a group through a narrative arc.
Right.
West Marches is decentralized. So I got like 10 people together and I said, "Do you want to play D&D sometimes?" And they were like, "Yeah, I would." And I'm like, "Cool, I'm going to run games." And they're like, "Oh my God, thank you." And I said, "Okay, but I'm going to run games when I can run games. And if you can show up, you can play." And they were like, "Okay, cool. How does that work?" And I'm like, "I'll tell you when you can play." And every couple of weeks or so for like a year and a half, I would just say, "Hey, I'm free on Saturday. Who wants to play?"
Yeah.
3 to 5 people would say, "I'm down. I'm bringing this character," and it might have been a character that they brought to another like session before, but it
Right.
was probably made of it in a different part of the world with a different problem. So I'm just making like massively decentralized little stories and sessions everywhere, and then the people that show up, the characters, the players, they're the ones that actually start to tie it all together.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, so that is the West Marches style. And I think that's really interesting about how it let you basically, or kind of drove you and let you, whatever, caused you to make these little, like you start with one
It's like
spot
a
on the
just a
map.
dot,
It's like a
right?
dartboard. Like you're throwing, and it's like a character says
Exactly.
like, "Oh, I'm from a swamp," and you're like, "All right, well, okay, there's a swamp," and then the character tells you this is like what my swamp was like, and you sort of like spin that out, or they tell you I'm from this place or a little town or a big city or whatever, right? And you kind of start to flesh that out, and then using the stuff people gave you, you would start to think of like, okay, well, I could put an adventure there too, and
Yeah,
maybe the
yeah.
person who was from there, that character didn't even go to that session. It didn't really matter. And you were kind of just like slowly, almost like mold on a petri dish that like grows together and then connects. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind
Just a
of like that when,
superstructure.
yeah, that's kind of how you built built this over time, which is cool in the sense that like, I know for a lot of people, world building can seem really overwhelming.
Hmm.
We actually talked a little bit in preparation for this, and there's like a metaphor that people think of when they think of world building, which is an iceberg, right? You've got this little
Hmm.
tippy top of the world building that we see, and this could be in like a movie or a video game or a novel or a TTRPG campaign or whatever, right? That like people, in order to feel like the world has verisimilitude, they want to feel like whoever created the world like knows every little thing about every
Hmm.
little thing, right? Um,
Right, right.
but like in reality, as a creative person, unless you want to be like J.R.R. Tolkien and just spend several decades working on this singular world and only ever
Which,
very
hey, just give me the
occasionally,
time.
right? And only ever very occasionally want to put anything out about it, right? Unless that's your model. And if that's your model, hey, if you want to do that as fun because that's fun
It's
for
worked
you,
before.
have fun, right? If that's your fun, have fun with it. But most of us have to, whether it's people writing creative work that they do for a living or just running TTRPGs, some of us have to put things out more often than that, right? And so what you actually want to do is streamline your process to where you're kind of only doing the work you need to, and then finding a
Mm.
way to like imply that you did the rest of it, right? Um,
Right.
and
You
so
want to
there's
give
a
the illusion of the iceberg
exactly,
without having to freeze all of the
yeah.
friggin' ice.
Um, Yeah, so if what you imagine is in the iceberg, there's an author by the name of Brandon Sanderson, none of whose book I have read, but I have watched several of his lectures on like creative writing, and I really liked this metaphor that he used about the iceberg because he said what you actually want to do, you have the top of the iceberg, and then you kind of like show the part of the iceberg that goes down into the water for about 50 feet or whatever, and then instead of doing all the work that it would take to like connect and fill in all the rest of that, you actually can just leave that hollow and not do it, because
Mm.
once you've shown
Mm.
somebody that you've thought like one or two or three questions deep into the behind the scenes of stuff, they just assume you did all the rest of the work and get on with their life. Right, because they actually don't want to know all of that stuff most of the time. So that's kind of like going back to this West Marches like model, is I think one of the interesting things about the Beast Wilds, which is that rather than feeling like, okay, I have to know every nook and cranny of every spot of this world, and I have to know every trade relationship between every village and da 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 da, it's basically just like you're putting these little spots on the map, and then things are growing and then
I'm
connecting from
salting
that.
it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm just sprinkling seasoning on
exactly.
the top, wherever that
And you're
seasoning
only
lands.
doing the amount of work it takes you to do the next thing you need to do. But then
Yes.
as you go, these connections are happening, sometimes based on what the players do. If this player shows up in one place and then they bring the same character to another place and then another place, it's like they start to leave this little trail of
Mm.
like how they've
Consequence.
impacted the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what were your influences for the Beast Wild. So we have some sense of like the kernel of the campaign, which was this mystery of the old gold, and that really excited you as like a concept, and then how the
Right.
West Marches nature of what you were doing was helpful and and led to a certain approach to how you were picking what you were building, right? But then let's talk about the influences that you're pulling from.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so many. We all, I think, we've all got the our like favorite movies. I'm a particular fan of like Sword and Sorcery, Conan the
Mm.
Barbarian,
Baffin and the Grandmaster.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Fantastic film. Very very definitive to like my love of fantasy when I was younger.
Gotcha.
Um, uh, I really like um, I really like learning about history of people who are not like me. I studied anthropology and archaeology in college a little bit, and I dabbled pretty heavily in linguistics. So I learned about how a lot. There's a lot of weird stuff about language, but mostly it got me curious about like the way that different people use languages to express ideas means that people think differently in different languages, and that the way that you structure logic in your brain in order to express it to like another person to receive is different depending on how like your languages agree about that stuff. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, what else about these people is different than just the way that they like have concepts and expressions? And so I got pretty deep into archaeology, specifically of the the North America and Central America, Mesoamerica, and like the indigenous American people, but pre-European contact. And I started to learn way more about the roughly 200 years between like the late 1400s, like 1490s, and like the 1700s, which is kind of just like a weird, murky part of history where like Westerners were showing up in all of these places. And they were foreigners. They were weirdos. They were strange and unusual, and they had different languages and customs. But we learn about everything from their perspective. Uh, and guess what? Indigenous people at the time were really organized and had written language, and they talked about meeting all these friggin' weirdos from across the sea. And I think that that's wonderful to actually like shift my perspective into something else. So, um, one of my like main goals with world building for the Beast Wilds was to make people various and unusual to us, uh, but based on real people, based on real stuff that real people have done at some point in human history. Because uh, a lot of the stuff I think might seem fantastic because it's in the Beast Wilds, but I think that the magic comes from the fact that I'm drawing on real life. Um, yeah.
Hell yeah. um, well, let's talk a little bit about like what are some of the kind of tools that you use on a daily basis. So, like, walk us through a little bit of like, when you sit down to start world building for something that you've got to do in a session that you're making, whatever.
Mm,
Like, practically speaking, what does that look like? What are some of the tools that you use? Some of the ways you approach things? You know, because again, I think one of the things we try to do in these talks is to give as much practical advice as we feel like we can. Which
for
this
sure.
stuff can be all abstract and shit because hey, it's world building. What are you gonna do? But it also is like perfectly fine for us to sit here and spout a bunch of like abstract, high-minded stuff. But we also think it's useful and important for us to talk about like, okay, how would we implement something like that in practice? So when looking at your setting, how do you implement those things?
Yeah, so it definitely can spin off into some pretty dense, like theoretical mumbo jumbo. So I'm going to try to keep it very, very simple. I'm honestly going to dumb it down more than is probably acceptable, or more than is actually encapsulating the idea. But basically, my advice, if you're trying to world build something the way I do, uh, to make it as lazy as possible for yourself, which is what I do. I chose to do a West Marches style because I only had to figure out the next thing when I was ready to do the next thing. And I stole a lot from my players. I used my players to tell me, again, like sort of the shape of what else should be in my world so that they feel like their characters fit and matter in that world. Um, and if the first few sessions, not gonna lie, pretty messy. You gotta write some messy stuff that you gotta overwrite, you gotta underwrite, you have to improvise. You have to kind of suck at something before you get good at it. And what I realized, what I started to keep falling back on were these generally three tools. One, I picked a color theory, essentially a group of colors and their qualities and why they matter and what they relate to in a metaphysical sense, which again sounds like a lot of mumble jumbo. Basically, red is blood, white is bone, gold is godly, purple is cosmic, black is underdark and death and stuff. Just very simple stuff like that. Just associations with words and ideas to colors. And then I basically created a number theory for making decisions about why my world is the way it is. Five is the good number, three is the bad number, and six is the special number. Literally, that's it. I don't have to explain it more than that. Um, and then this is kind of a weird idea to put into practice. But I swear it anytime I'm too tired to think of like something cool to do, I realize I can do this and it always works. I call it fractalization. So a fractal is a thing that is both itself and made of itself. so that as you zoom in, it's just smaller groups of itself.
Yeah.
For instance,
Sort of like an
uh,
infinitely recursive repeating pattern.
the
Like,
Triforce
yeah.
is kind of like a fractal, not yeah. So let's just say that. Let's just say that. The
You can
Triforce is
Google
a
them if you listen. If you're
right.
listening to the sound of our voice and you don't know what a fractal is, if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, just give it a
Right,
Google.
but
You'll
dear
see a
Lord,
few. You'll see what we're
I
talking
didn't
about.
look up the definition. I'm sorry. So here is an example of how to think like this. Okay. Um, 5 is the good number. I already said that, right? And so 5 is the good number, and I have a color theory. How many colors should I have? 5. I don't have to think about it more than that. I just say 5. 5 it is. And those 5 colors are gold, silver, black, red, and white. Every single color is just one of those. That might sound weird to you if you've never studied color theory, but in some parts of the world, people have languages that only have like 4 colors. And when they say red, it means a lot of things, including things that you and I would call like orange, yellow, green, brown. And to them, it's all just in a category called red color. That's how I'm approaching this. Um, I had to think of 5 cities, or no, I didn't. Sorry. I had to think of a group of cities in order to make a faction in my world, a larger faction that had like some sort of higher authority over a population, so like a government essentially. It's like, well, how many cities are participating in this? It's 5. There are 5 cities. Easy. Don't
Right.
ask
Sure.
questions. Don't go beyond. Like set limits for yourself and
Yeah.
stop like literally don't think about things. To set your variables ahead of time and you can just boom 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 boom. Um
Yeah.
yeah. So I the okay, the last example I'm going to give, just because I think a few examples for folks to conceive of this. If you've ever seen a model of like an electron and then a model of the solar system,
Yeah. Right.
an electron looks like a solar system, and the solar system is bagillions times bigger scale than us. And an electron is like one of the trillion gajillion things that make up all matter, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's tiny. And those things are so vastly different in scale. That's fractalization.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of it like using the predefined principles that you've kind of come up with at whatever scale you're working at to sort of like help you kind of quickly sketch out whatever it is that you need to fill a particular world building hole that you're dealing with. Um, cool, cool, cool. I guess you're looking at the same notes that I'm looking at here. Um,
Yeah, I've been yammering quite a lot.
sure.
I want to give you an opportunity to comment. You've played as a player
Yeah,
in the Beast Wilds. You have also
I
DM'd
have
in
also
the
DM'd
Beast
these files.
Wilds.
Yes.
So that's probably something that most people don't get to do. And it might seem strange to folks that I let someone else DM in my setting, like a homebrew setting.
Yeah.
But I maybe talk about your perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, I basically had this idea. Um, I was listening to not another D&D podcast, and they have this like group of elves that are like hick elves, which is just such a funny like thing, right?
Right.
That that they're these like swamp living wood elves who are just you know like hicks basically. So hayseeds, whatever you want to call it, right? And it's such a funny because normally like in the Tolkien sense you get these like regal, pale-skinned elves, and they're like, "Lo, the
Right.
4,000 years ago, your father's father," blah, blah, blah. They're just all fucking high-minded and shit. And so I thought that was really, really funny as a concept, just that kind of juxtaposition. Um, and then I was also thinking about some of the stuff that you had been doing at the time with was it the weird demon frogs and shit? Like there was,
The
I
night
think it
frogs.
was after that one sorcerer I made that you killed. Um
Real.
yeah, after real. And I was thinking about like the way that you had made the like those I don't even remember what you call them, but the devil frog things. And
Night
so I
frogs. Yeah,
night
yeah,
frogs,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I basically was kind of taking that idea that you had of these like corrupted beings or whatever, and I was thinking about the swamp and I just sort of like was riffing on all of that. So kind of stole the idea for these swamp elves and then did my own flair on it. And it's this weird mix of like, which I was trying to kind of go in the direction of the stuff that I played several sessions in the Beast One at this point. That it's this
Right.
mix of like there is
Soak up the
something
vibe.
serious happening, and there's like big metaphysical and political stuff that's going on, but it's also just absolutely like
It's
gonzo.
it's a
I think
little Looney
gonzo is the
Tunes.
good word. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
you know, it's got so it's like just,
it's a little flapjack.
so for instance I had all of these elves like that culturally speaking, they defined their family ties by the kinds of pants they wore. you
I
know
love that.
so like there would be these people were the capris and those ones are the I don't even remember all the ones I've done. um
Culottes, hot
Culottes is
pants,
hot pants, yeah, yeah,
high
yeah.
waters,
Yes, there's a bunch of them.
capris, long
um
johns.
and then and so it was just sort of like mashing that stuff together, and it was really interesting, and like those, you've integrated that, I think, really well. And I do think it was like because I had played in the setting and seen kind of like what you'd been doing, and you actually talked to me a little bit about the concept of the setting kind of as you were thinking of doing it in the first place. Um, and then we know each other really well, and I was like, I have an idea of this adventure that I think would like really work, and I basically made this like uh devil bee, like this infernally corrupted bee, um, and stuff. There was something about salamanders. I don't know. There's a lot going on in that. Um,
It was a dryad, so
yes,
you had
that's right. It
made
was a dry.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The corrupted
It was sort of
dryad.
like
Yeah,
in a tar pit. There
yeah,
was this dryad, and it was all gross,
yeah. It was
and it
very.
started summoning like goobies.
Yes, yep. And it was very much like a dryad mixed with Hexus from the Fern Gully, right? It was
Oh
just like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it was when it was the corruption of the swamp that was happening because of, I don't even think I knew what was causing it. I just left that over to you. Like, there's some infernal force. I know you know what this is.
The
I know.
sisters.
Yeah. Um. So that was very fun, and it was very cool to get to create in that setting. But I also think as a player, one of the things that like both the West Marches and just like your kind of approach to this thing have done that's also really interesting is that like you have been able to give the players a lot more agency to like do big things to the world than you get in a lot of settings. I mean, especially like it's hard in pre-written adventures, which is all that a lot of us really have time to run. To because you're constrained in certain things, right? You can't like let the player just even if they have a goal, they're like, I will, for instance, I have a character in the Beast Wild, Sabine the Pirate Queen. So when I first made Sabine, I was like, she's like
God, I
this
love Sabine.
raucous elf woman. She doesn't take shit from anybody, and she's a pirate, right? But she doesn't have like a ship. She just is a pirate. And over the course of playing her, she has now basically become the de facto leader of this pretty massive faction. One of the de facto leaders. We don't really know what's going on with Soggy Beast right now. Um,
I
you know,
do.
anyway, so she's become one of the de facto leaders of an entire group of pirates that like the stuff that they do matters on the world stage, which you couldn't really do as easily in a pre-made adventure, right?
Hmm.
We talked about this yesterday. Within the scope of a normally pre-made adventure, the kinds of things our characters are getting to do, and it's not just me. Our buddy Jacob has several characters who have done this. A lot. I
Yeah.
could name a lot of different characters who have had pretty big impacts on things. It's the kind of stuff that normally would be like the denouement of a campaign, where it's like you ask the question, all right, what are they doing 6 months from now or a year from now or whatever, and you kind of describe like, well, she got a pirate ship and she got this band of pirates together and they sail around doing what. Um, but because of the nature of this campaign setting, it's like, I actually get to sort of say like, well, these are her goals. It's not like I have direct control over her all the time. Like you have leeway to be like, well, this is what she's up to now. But like I can basically say like her goals in general are this or that. And it's like it's been very cool to have control over a character that has like sort of at this point some global stage shaking
Hmm.
powers, where you normally don't often get those kinds of opportunities. Um Again, unless it's just like the denouement of a campaign. Um so that's also been like a really cool thing about playing a character in the Beast Wilds, um, is the way that you've been able to kind of make the characters be able to make those really big choices. But I think that's also because of that West Marches style of thing. It's like even though the character's at a big level, right? And like able to do kind of this like really world shaking stuff, it doesn't necessarily like impact exact like what Sabine is doing doesn't super necessarily impact what Grin's Tin Fingers has going on. You know what I mean? It will eventually maybe run into
Right.
each other, but it's like there's enough space in the world for her to be able to take that position and do stuff without you know screwing everything up for you running things as a GM trying to keep things on track because you're not trying to keep anything on track. You're kind of reactive to everything, you know.
If anything, I'm trying to make sure there are no
Yeah, right.
rails.
And it's like when you do individual adventures, you kind of have a
It's pretty
scenario
tight,
that's
yeah.
playing out, right? But, you know, outside of that, you don't have an overarching like as much of an over like there's big things happening in the world, but you're not running a single campaign that you have to like week to week keep on track. So it's like you can take the time to kind of figure out how does everything react to this thing that happened in that session or whatever.
Well, actually, let's talk about the last like standard campaign I did try to run, right? Because I tried I've done it a couple of times now in the Beast Wilds. I have run campaigns. I've run Gilded Girls. I ran Unbreakable Loop, and then I tried to do the Way Forward.
Yeah.
It kind of fell apart. But every time I did one of those like more typical campaigns where the cast is the same session to session, uh, I I made sure to give those characters the opportunity to fundamentally break the world in some way so that every time after that someone played in the Beast Wilds,
Right.
they literally had to contend with a consequence that
Right.
another player had enacted across the entire setting.
Yeah, I think that's what. Yeah, I think that you're describing that well. That's what I was kind of trying to get at.
Right.
Yeah,
And because that's fun, right? Like
yeah, oh yeah, it
when
is very
when
cool.
when sometimes so this is the fun thing that has happened in my game, and if this sounds fun to you, then try taking some of my approach to world building at heart. I have had this happen where a new player comes to a game, plays a session with some folks who have played before, and they see something crazy, and they're like, "Is that normal?" And the other players get to say like, "Oh, that's because of so and so who
This thing happens.
this
Yeah,
this thing," and the new player's
kind of
like,
like well, yeah,
"Are you
we sort of did that, but not like
right?"
these. And it may not even be these characters here, but it's like yeah, that happened in game because of shit we did. Yeah,
And that if that happens every session where someone's like, "Wait, what?" and then someone else is like, "Oh, I know why that is. It's
right.
because of
Yeah,
some nonsense that we did so and so long ago."
yeah,
And that's my favorite thing. That giving people the opportunity to claim
mm,
world building
yeah,
for their characters and for themselves, I think makes the Beast Wilds fun for me,
yeah,
and I hope that it makes it fun for other folks.
yeah. Very cool. Yeah, and there was one last thing that we wanted to kind of talk about. I think we
Right.
I think had touched on it actually in our world building stream number two. The idea of recontextualizing a world. We also, when we talked about this in episode two, referenced the Chroma Conclave arc of Critical Role Campaign 1, where, spoiler alert for a 10-year
Right.
old thing, but, basically Matt
They
Mercer
nuke a
took,
city, right?
yeah, takes his, like, capital city that everyone's in love with and has this dragon just come in and smash it. And it was a way, if you think about it, just, it's a very cool storytelling beat, but if you think about it from the perspective of GM, it's a way to signal to the players that you're in a new league now, right? When you like, if you think about like D&D itself, and not every TTRPG is this way, but particularly D&D, it's like when you're level like 1 through 5, you're sort of saving things in a town or a small county, and when you're like levels 5 to 10, did we lose you? I'll just keep going. When you're levels 5 to 10, you're saving things in like a city or a region or a kingdom or whatever, right? And then when you get 10 and above, it sort of expands out. And so it was a very cool way to say, hey, up to this point you've been kind of like medium-sized fish in a pretty big pond. Now you're fucking, tiny little guppies in a fucking ocean or whatever, right? And you did something very similar in we did something. A thing happened that was very similar with the Beast Wilds. And I was, Sabine and I played quite a part in that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Yeah,
my second campaign, the Unbreakable Loop, was a time loop campaign where I had the NPCs repeating the same day until they could break the loop. And the Unbreakable Loop is just rife with like double entendre. Um, uh, loop being the time loop, but loop also meaning a ring. Because gold rings was like magical gold rings was like a big thing. Um, Unbreakable because it's made out of old gold. So again, I try to be as lazy and efficient with my ideas as possible, and just like the weird like word bubble that comes up when I think of things is just what I grab from. I try not to go too far beyond that. So the point of the campaign was for all of the folks to infiltrate a private party where a nasty guy who was the king of the city lived, and he was celebrating a very important holiday with taxpayer dollars,
classic.
and um, essentially was just like keeping wealth inequality so terrible in this place that like the characters themselves like had to experience huge disparities in end inequality, and I gave them that moral choice to say, do you want this to be the way it continues? You're in a time loop, you're being constantly reminded this is the way things are, and they're going to keep being this way until you break the loop. What else breaks? What else are you going to break? And in order to the culmination of this holiday was the performance of a magical. It's a magical performance piece with music and dance and some other things. And the performance itself, again, fractalization, was a microcosm of the campaign. It was a symbolic representation in mechanized form of ideas and things that I had built around into the campaign, into the narrative, and into just how it worked as a time loop. A couple of people picked up on that, but you guys actually got through it really quick, which is why at the end, when you didn't do it quite right because you didn't take enough time to figure out how it works, you kind of broke shit, and the sun went away, the sky turned to shadow, the stars and the moon, there is no light from the heavens anymore, and you are stuck on a completely darkened planet with dwindling fuel resources, uh, failing crops. We're going into the silent season, which is like the final month of the calendar year, and things are not looking great. And I've been running
Yeah.
a lot of sessions in that new style of setting, um, which again has a couple of interesting advantages for the way I run things. If there's no light, the characters can only see within their little bubble. Like, you got dark vision, great. 60 feet diameter, that is your entire world.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy for me to tell you what is around you because it's not much.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, those are kind of all the main notes that we had. Is there anything else as far as the world building that you've put into the Beast Bonds that you want to touch on?
Um, yeah, I'll just say uh, I have a particular fancy for things like human relationships and anthropology, and some pretty deep dive stuff that I have researched and read into because I thought it was interesting that I ended up stealing from for the Beast Wilds
Classic.
is stuff like um, okay, don't get scared. Uh, the royal lineages of the ancient Maya, and their court life. Uh, um, I've looked at Egyptian magic, ancient Egyptian magical papyri. They have a dope translations of a lot of these like really old scrolls and incantations and things. You can find them everywhere, and they read so funky to us. They're just like, oh, beseecher, I beseech. I am the one who stands. I stand because you are great. Like, it's weird sounding to us, but that weird sound is really hard for us to come up with in natural, English language, whatever. So steal it from people who are different than you. Like, take stuff that is not, you know, of you, and put it in your game, and it gives it that weirdness, that touch of strange, uh, that people look at, and it becomes a puzzle to them in sort of like a grander sense. And another of those things that's like, how do I figure out like what comes next? When people ask me something that you know, I'll sprinkle that stuff in, right? Like a magical incantation. And someone's like, that's kind of weird. Why are they saying it like that? As soon as they ask that question, I know that there's a mystery there that
Yeah.
intrigues them. There's buy in already. Use that buy in. Like, recognize when your players are buying into something and use that energy to pull them in further to your world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It reminds me of kind of two precepts. One is from the OG Matt Colville. If you play TTRPGs and you want to learn to run them, highly recommend his videos. It's the precept from Uncle Colville is Uncle Matt is it's your game. Put the stuff you like in it, right? The second one though is from Brennan Lee Mulligan of Dimension 20 fame and other dropout college humor stuff. Which is that I don't know exactly how he says it, but it's kind of like let the players drive your story. So it's like it's a mix of like
100%.
take the stuff you like, put it in your game. We're getting raided. Welcome in VP and crew. We are actually about to wrap up here in a
Well,
minute, I think. So we're gonna send you guys on to someone else even. But welcome in, folks. Thanks for the raid. Little nugget, little skittles. Welcome in, everybody. Um, take the things you like, put them in your game. But also like find the things that your players kind of hook on to, and like reward them for getting invested in your world.
hands down.
Yeah,
A few people have made characters and brought them to me to say, I want them to be in the Beast Wilds. And they were very intentional about it being like a collaborative thing. They were like, I want to make a character that's kind of like this, but I want it to be in the Beast Wilds. How do I do that? And most the first like three times that happened, the characters were so interesting, and they created ways for me to make stuff that I probably wouldn't have thought about on my own. And that alone is already like giving them the space to do that in my world. I think makes my world better. That's my opinion. And they probably do too. So do it together. Like world building alone is a really indulgent activity, as you know.
Yeah.
But the magic of TTRPGs is creating together.
Hell yeah. Well, I did give a shout out to our buddy Vincent Page, folks. If you've been following us and you haven't followed him, do go give him a follow. He's a good buddy of mine. We are actually going to be playing another game of D&D, possibly streamed. I haven't fully decided yet. We're going to be playing Waterdeep Dragon Heist, which
That's
we
a
have
good
run
one.
before on the channel. But I'm down to stream it again if folks are down to stream it again. We'll see. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe we'll TBD on that. But yeah, thank you for the raid, and I guess we're gonna send you guys on to someone else. You guys kind of rated us, unfortunately, right at the end of what we were talking about. This will be up on YouTube if people want to watch it. We were talking about Beast's campaign setting known as the Beast Wilds. But we are going to raid out, my friends. Send you on. Send the Ages of Ainur, Bonus Mom's Tavern, and Yeet Fleet Love. We will send you guys over to our friends here. So yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. We will be doing this. We've been doing these world building streams once a month. I don't know when we'll be doing our next one. We typically do them on Thursdays after I get off work. We have a lot of different ideas that we are thinking of talking about. If you have anything you would like us to talk about or feedback in general, you can send that to us. Discord is probably the best place to do it. Email is an okay place to do it. Our YouTube comments is a place to do it. I very rarely check them, but
I'll check them.
maybe we'll see it. But we're gonna send you over to our friends. Thank you again so much for the raid, and we will see you guys next time. Let me tell a tale of a world where heroes walk among us, fighting through the darkness, left by monsters and by selfish men. A tale of glory rents asunder, sacrifice and battles lost. Our heroes know not what awaits them, and still they carry on. Let me sing a song of a family forged by trials and woe. On their own they falter, but together